breaking barriers and bridging the gaps between patients and doctors. Welcome to Brainstorming with the Docs and your co-hosts, Dr. Glenn Harrison and Dr. Kolby Condos.
All right, everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of Brainstorming with the Docs. I'm Dr. Kolby Condos, my co-host and good friend, Dr. Glenn Harrison. How's it going, bud?
Doing great. I'm doing great. I like this one. This is
yeah, I do too.
I think we are leaning more with our podcast more into the psychology of patterns and behaviors and stuff like that.
It does seem like that has been a common theme lately, for sure. I think that I go in waves with this though too, because I actually had this conversation this morning with one of my patients. And we were talking about, self-improvement, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I recently read this book. It's called Atomic Habits. And he's like, oh, I love that book. Nice. And that's actually kind of like this inspiration where we started looking at like behaviors, especially when it comes to behaviors that impact your health, whether those are positive or negative behaviors. What are some of the precursors to those behaviors that you need to analyze in order to determine or make a change or implement even more positive behaviors? So if this is the first time you're listening or watching and you get value out of this podcast, please hit like and subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're going to continue to roll out new content like this each and every week. And you never know when we might roll out something applicable to you. So Let's talk about coupled behaviors. We're not talking about coupled as in like they're in a relationship. We're talking about I guess they are in a relationship.
They are in a relationship. Yeah, they are. We can make this. We can talk about it that way. So coupled behaviors, but yeah, just the concept where one behavior leads to another, and the outcome, the behavior. We always want to change our habits to change our outcomes, which is necessary, but to change the habit just doesn't come naturally. As the book you referenced, James Clear, Atomic Habits, it doesn't just come naturally. There has to be a system or a strategy. And one of the components is, and he talked about it a little bit, was coupled behaviors. One behavior leads to another, and then that behavior leads to another. And if you go way on the front end, way upstream of the first behavior, that might be easier to modify. And then the downstream behavior, the resulting coupled behavior, is the one that you're looking for.
Like investing, right? The earlier you invest, compound interest in time, the bigger the gains, right? If you start small and implement it early, then downstream it's going to pay larger dividends.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So desired behaviors that you're trying to change or implement, that what desired behaviors that you're trying to implement and struggling with. This podcast, I think, is relevant because, we weave into the science of things and the diagnostics of things and the mechanisms of disorders, but all of these disorders we've ever talked about on here require some effort, some change, some lifestyle piece. There's no magic pill or potion. You can practice green pharmacology or go to a doctor that's just throwing vitamins at everybody. They're only going to have about a 10, 15, maybe % success rate with serious chronic illness. There has to be some behavioral change. It has to be some. So the limitation, and I know it's the same thing in your office, the limitation of outcomes is based off the individual's ability to implement the pieces. So that's why this psychology and pattern
habit building is just so imperative, because it doesn't matter. You can have all the science in the world and tell everybody and explain everything and have all the diagnostics, but if they don't have the strategy to put it in place, that was all just a big waste of time. Well, and even in my practice, I've seen this, and I've actually modified how I approach certain like chronic cases with this, because early in practice, I'd be like, okay, here's this beautifully laid out plan. I'll see you in 6 to 8 weeks.
We talked about this. They
would come back in 6 to 8 weeks and they'd be like, yeah, I didn't really do any of that because I didn't know where to start.
Doctor.
Yeah. So now I'm like, all right, we're going to meet weekly for the first 4 to 6 weeks. And we are going to establish tools and behaviors and patterns that you can reproduce. And the reason we do it each week is, one, because there's an accountability piece that you have to come and look at me and tell me if you did or did not do it. And when people get under those uncomfortable circumstances, they're more likely to follow through. And number two is, if you have questions, it's easier to modify the behavior 1 week into the plan than it is at week 6.
And you're helping them you're facilitating their ability to analyze their own behaviors, to catch where do you slide off, right? That's absolutely imperative. And after you said this, it's kind of coming to me that that's what I'm doing a lot when we're trying to implement behaviors, is finding out where did they slip, where were they before they slipped, when they got to the crossroads, what was going on, and why did they take the wrong path? Because it's not always obvious when we're in the trenches ourselves, right? There's knee-jerk reactions. So that's why a couple of behaviors is so important. So a good example, we talked about this, if we're trying to have more energy, so that's the outcome, we'll improve energy. There's so much of that in the morning and have a more restful sleep. The habit starts the evening before. We've talked about this, and I always talk about this with our patients. How you wake up in the morning, how rested you are, it has nothing to do with the morning. It has everything to do with, when you went to bed the night before.
Bed.
Yeah, the sleep hygiene pieces. We've talked about this on this podcast. The diet you've had before. What stress responses did you have before that night before? So if you want to have the desired outcome, there has to be, you have to go to sleep at the right time. Okay, so that's one behavior. But what is coupled with that behavior? Well, you probably have to brush your teeth on time, or prepare for bed on time, or take care of your work early enough. Everything has to
pack your lunch for tomorrow.
Yeah, everything has to. All those behaviors leading up to going to sleep on time facilitates this, and great sleep. In the morning, you get your final product. But if you just say, okay, I'm going to go to sleep earlier, if you don't have those other behaviors on the front end of that, you're not going to be ready for sleeping early. And then you're going to beat yourself up. So the behaviors of preparing for bed earlier are coupled with actually being able to go to bed earlier, giving us the outcome with hopefully a better sleep and being rested in the morning. Sounds very simple, but until you dissect it, I've worked with people, for 20 years of their life, they've been really tired. And then we find out their sleep sucks. They're not getting enough of it. And then they made it into their dragon, which we talked about on another podcast. We build it up bigger and bigger and bigger, that we just can't go to sleep. So these coupled behaviors are significant, but it allows us to question other behaviors or patterns in our life. This is just one example of sleep, but what else can we do? What are some other coupled behaviors that you see in the clinic?
Well, let me give you an example. I'll give you one of my examples. This is recent, right? So I had a patient, was a youth patient, was having trouble going to the bathroom. Right. When I talked to the parents, they were like, yeah, he has not gone to the bathroom. He has not pooped in 2 weeks. And I was like, how? And this kid is like, prepubescent.
How old is the kid?
We'll say between the ages of 5 and 10.
Okay.
So what we had to do is we had to break down what were some of the behaviors that were leading to this constipation. Everyone, because the kid's living off of Miralax. And he's living off of, laxatives. And that's not a recipe for success. That's not a recipe for longevity. That's a Band-Aid. That is not identifying the problem.
Yeah.
So we had to look down. When did it start? Well, it started when he got really busy, and it got worse when he went to school. Okay. So what are some strategies? What behavior is that? Well, what does his morning look like? Well, we're really busy. We got a lot of kids. We're rushing out the door in the morning. Okay. So not a lot of time to sit down on the throne and do your business in the morning if you're super stressed out and like trying to eat breakfast and get your homework done from the night before. And so we had to go through and start implementing different behaviors and patterns. Okay. So what he's going to do first thing in the morning, guys, are going to get him up. He's going to eat breakfast within 10 minutes of waking up. Then he's going to sit on the toilet, regardless of if he has to go, because we want to build that habit, right? We want to build that pattern. We want to build that routine. And then we looked at some other things as far as diet and all this other stuff. And this kid went from voiding his bowels every 2 weeks. I gave the parents some exercises. I gave them some strategies that they were going to implement, and they came in 4 weeks ago, and the kid is going every day.
Wow.
So kids usually a little bit faster than adults, right?
Yeah. But the behaviors also affect kids.
Yes.
The patterns, the couple behaviors.
So the kid was rushed in the morning. And then I don't know about you, but when I was his age, I most definitely did not want to go to the bathroom at school. He'd hold it all day, right?
That's true. That's true.
So then he suppressed those natural urges. So we just had to take him back to the basics and rebuild it. But kids
versus another serving of Miralax.
Exactly.
Like it's going to transform everything and offset or replace the lifestyle change. Yeah.
Right.
Another thing that I know we had a note here about was intention. And I really like this. I think you brought it up when we were kind of prepping for this one. The intention, one behavior sets an intention for another. I've seen this, and I think we talked about it. It creates an intention, like I've seen people do this where they take their supplements and it's a reminder of what their goals are, or maybe their health focus. And then it would help them. They might be more consistent with their workouts, or they might be more consistent with food prep, or they might I've seen workouts do this where people are working out. When it comes time for dinner, they actually look at more healthier choices. Some people say, oh, well, I just crave healthier food. Maybe. I think a lot of it is emotional. They did their workout.
Me, it's 100% mental. If I crank out a workout in the morning, the last thing I want to do for breakfast is go get like a something McGriddle from McDonald's, like, oh, that was a waste of time. Like, I just wasted that workout.
That's true.
And then have to go crank out another one.
Yeah. And then the opposite can be, and I've seen this in the gym, people I used to work out with, they would go work out and then they would go for ice cream across the street or something, because they believed that was, now they earned it. Yeah. But it's not as often with that, the setting the intention. So the behavior is not only one behavior coupled with another, and it's just finding out which one do you need to get to the behavior that you need to get the outcome that you need. But it's also what behaviors will you implement on a daily basis to set the intention of the second behavior.
Right. It's like a chain reaction.
It does. But it cannot get unspooled the same way. I have people in my office, they do a journal. I think we've talked about, our strategies with this, but I want to get up to speed on how their whole week was. So I get them to log this digital journal and then send it to me the day before our appointment. Then I get up to speed and I know what to ask them and I see what they're doing and all of that. I know right away if they fell out of their lifestyle habits when they didn't submit the journal. It's like a 95% chance, 5% chance they forgot to, but usually people never forget. But they just didn't do it because either the lack of doing it created falling off the wagon, or falling off the wagon, they also fell out of everything.
And there's no accountability. Well, they don't want to be held accountable, right? Oh, I fell out. I'm not going to record it.
That's right. And I think part of this inspiration for this podcast was so many people are all in or all out. And it's because one couple behavior, good or bad, creates a cascade of other behaviors. And then like good behaviors tend to instill better behaviors, and bad behaviors tend to instill more coupled other bad behaviors. So that's how we sway all the way in, one of the reasons, or sway all the way out.
And I think that one thing that I've realized even in my personal life is that these things are going to ebb and flow, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to fall out of it.
Yeah.
And then you're going to come back to it. But the trick is, do you have the systems and the habits built up already that when you go back to it, it's sustainable again?
That's right. Having a system and a structure that's not overwhelming. I saw online, there was this guy, he said that, I can't remember what the philosophy was. He said, and he was a trainer. He said that one of the reasons why when we feel we have to follow an extreme behavior to get the outcome, and if we don't follow that extreme behavior, we give up. Partially is we believe that if we're not all in, we're never going to get the outcome we want. So we just fall all the way out, and then there's guilt and shame and all of that. So part of it is expectations. The only way we can get any outcome is if we're all the way in. And if they're not 100% in, we're not going to get the perfect outcome, and then we're going to give up. So that's one scenario. We're all in or all out. We like extreme behaviors, and it's very hard to stay extreme with anything.
Not sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a patient, and she told me, and I wrote it down. Now I'm going to butcher it, but I repeat it. It was really, really good. And she's highly disciplined, one of the most disciplined people that I know. And she said, never let perfect get in the way of better. And I love that so much. I wrote it down, and I don't know if that's her line, but it's so true. We extreme behaviors are trying to hit perfection. And then if we can't be just better, we give up. Again, we're a bit of a tangent here about couple behaviors, but I think it's important if we, even a couple behavior, if we're not all the way in, like you're saying, ebbs and flows in our patterns and our systems, and that's okay when we slip a little bit. Most people can't follow anything because they believe if it's not perfect, they're done. So, yeah.
So keep on keeping on, everybody. Don't give up, even if you slipped off a little bit.
That's right.
So, But if you got value out of this one and you like this type of content, or you just like to get a hold of us, please, again, hit like and subscribe, turn on notifications so you can find us when we come out with new content. Our contact information, if you have questions or comments or anything, is info@brainstormingwiththedocs.com. Our websites are northlakeschiropractic.com. Dr. Glenn's is drgharrison.com. And again, stay tuned because we're going to continue to roll out new content each and every week.
That's exactly right. Well, I like
right,
that
buddy.
one, Dr. Kolby. I look forward to the next.
Sounds good, buddy.